Begin the current Daf in Pesachim Daf Kuf Aleph. We begin on the bottom of Kuf base, 3 lines up at the bottom of the Yomid. We continue the discussion of the previous Daf regarding making Kiddush on Friday, by Shabbos, by the Shabbos day, on Friday. Actually, which one is this? It doesn't say. But any Kiddush on Shabbos. She's Kosban Zakazik and the Cheskut Anitam Daf. Hashem is joining us for today's Daf. Something we're discussing today's Daf are those who make Kiddush in Shul. What's the purpose, what's the objective of that Kiddush? And also, what do you fulfill with that Kiddush in Shul? Because there's two things every time you make Kiddush. There's the bracha on the wine, which is B'ay Priagofen, and there's a lot of lumdis and a lot of these sugyan. We're just going to touch the surface of these, but there's the bracha of the yain, and then there's the bracha of the Kiddush. What does one fulfill when he hears Kiddush in Shul? Some places still have the custom, most don't have that custom. In halacha, ideally that you don't make that Kiddush anymore, but I grew up in such a shul, they used to make Kiddush in Shul. What's the objective and what do you fulfill with that? And that relates to the sugya of Kiddush Makom Suda, that you have to have Kiddush in the place that you're having the meal, and you're not having the meal over there, so what are you accomplishing with that Kiddush? Again, we don't mean Kiddush, the Kiddush that people eat the yap chicken, we mean the Kiddush of just with a cup of wine, that Kiddush, not having an actual Kiddush. That's another discussion regarding what's considered as a Makom Suda. Then there's a discussion regarding classic halachic discussion, Hilchos Brachas, is a new bracha required when a person moves from one place to another while eating. In the middle of eating and you leave the place and go to somewhere else, do you require another bracha or not? Some of the important terms and concepts we have in today's stuff are in Kiddush of Makom Suda. Kiddush can only be in the place where you're having your meal. Davish and Miskavan is they did that on Shabbos if you're doing malacha but you're not intending to do it, is that can be considered as a malacha or not? Shina Mokim is the idea that you, in the middle of eating, you change your place to another place. And Dvarim HaTu'unim Bracha Achreim B'Bekayim is a very important halacha regarding that of Shina Mokim. If it's something that requires Bracha Achreina after you finish eating in the place that you ate it, which gives a certain significance to that thing that you're still in the middle of eating, then even if you left, it wouldn't be considered as if you finished your eating session, because you still have to come back and make a Bracha Achreina in your place, and therefore, you actually would not have to make a new bracha if you change your place. So begin the current Daf Kuf Amud Beis, 3 lines up at the bottom of the Yomid. Says the Gemara, Eisam b'nei Adam shekiddush b'Beis HaKnesses. Those people that they make Kiddush in the Shul, which is the Kiddush that the Tzibur makes on Friday nights and on Yom Tovim in the Shul, what is the function, what does one accomplish with that Kiddush? So Amar Rav says, Yideyayin lo yatzu. They don't fulfill their obligation of the wine, meaning, if they have more wine in their house that they're going to drink, they're going to have to make a B'ay Priagofen, because they have not exempted when they have the bracha on the cup of wine that they drank in Shul, because once they leave their place from the Shul and they're going home, that's what's called Hesach Hadas. You already removed your consciousness from your first drinking session in Shul, and you have to make a new bracha. But as the Rashbam points out, if you make Kiddush in your house on your table on Shabbos, you don't have to make a new bracha on the wine that's in the middle of the Suda, because the wine that you made a bracha before the Suda, as the Mishnah teaches in case of Daf Yomi, will exempt the wine that you have after the meal, and for sure during the meal itself. I think Mother explains, talking about specifically in Shabbos and Yom Tov, where a person establishes his meal on wine, so therefore we're presuming that it's going to be, that he's having in mind to have it later on. But regarding that of that you had in Shul, that's not going to help for what you can have later on. Now, the question is, even though we hold that you could have Kiddush Shalei B'Makom Suda, and therefore Kiddush has nothing to do with the meal, so therefore Tesa wants to say, let's say if you do have Havdalah on your table, that should exempt you from also making a bracha on the wine later on the meal, even though that you could have Havdalah without the Suda, and that gets into the whole discussion. People have that question always regarding the Sukkah. When you're making the Havdalah, what's with the wine that's going to come later on? Is that applicable or not, or is that a own separate thing? But one thing for sure is that the way the Rashbam and Tesa are saying that if you have Kiddush that you're making in your house, then that's going to exempt the wine later on, but that you're making in Shul is not going to exempt. So that's regarding the wine. But then says Rav, Yidei Kiddush Yatzu. But the Kiddush, that you fulfilled your obligation. So even though you didn't drink in Shul, which the halach is that Hamakadosh Tzarech Shiyitim, whoever's making Kiddush has to taste the wine. However, if only one person drinks the wine, then they all fulfill their obligation. Now, usually, that was the shul that I grew up, you'll see a little kid will drink it, because that gets into the whole discussion. Could you make that Kiddush because it's Shalei B'Makom Suda, so it wouldn't be appropriate to necessarily even drink that wine. But one thing is that like a tchila really, whenever you're hearing kiddush and you'll see people buy a kiddush, you'll see people going to get the cup of wine from the one who made the kiddush. Rashbam points out like a tchila, all have to taste it. But al kapanim, if you heard kiddush in the shul, according to Rab, you wouldn't have to make kiddush in your house because Rab does not require kiddush b'makom suda. So therefore, even though they didn't eat in the shul, they fulfilled their kiddush that they heard in the shul. So there was two halachas Rab said. One is the wine, the bar priagafen. That, so to speak, you didn't fulfill your obligation, meaning you're going to have to make a bar priagafen when you come and you drink wine at home. But your kiddush that you heard in shul, that fulfilled your obligation. Now, Shmuel Amma, he disagrees. He says that after the kiddush lo yasa, the kiddush of kafal from an out. He says that you also did not fulfill your obligation of kiddush. As the Gemara is going to shortly explain his opinion, the kiddush was only b'makom suda, like the famous pasuk in Yeshaya says, "V'karasa l'Shabbos oinik." Now, what does that mean, according to Shmuel? In the place we're going to call out for Shabbos, that's where there should be oinik, and therefore that's telling us that it has to be a suda over there. Or Rashbam says it's a svara. It's logic. And the fact that we know that the halacha is that you make kiddush on wine, as the Brisa teaches later on the Kuf of Manal, Zechrei Eliyayin, we could presume which wine are we talking about? It's the wine that you're making the meal on, which is more chashav, more significant. So two different reasons why the kiddush has to be b'mokum suda. Al kaponim, the kiddush that you heard in shul, which you didn't have a meal over there. Again, our kiddush, there is a discussion that yes, once you have mezainis and this and that, that's considered b'mokum suda. But we're talking about the classic, the old style kiddush. They would just make kiddush in shul. Hearing that kiddush, one has not fulfilled his obligation. Now, but then the Gemara says, according to either interpretation of Rav, lama lili kiddush bebeise. According to Rav, that you fill your kiddush that you hear in shul. So why do you make kiddush at home? Well, says the Gemara, and this is what people do even with the current kiddush. They have a regular kiddush where they fulfill the obligation of kiddush makom suda. Why do they make it at home? Because to fulfill the family members that they didn't hear kiddush in shul. Now, Shmuel lama lili kiddush bebeise. According to Shmuel, why do you make kiddush in shul? You told me, according to Shmuel, there's no suda over this, you're not fulfilling your obligations, so why make kiddush in shul? Says the Gemara, and it's coming to exclude, to exempt the guests of their obligation. We're going to make kiddush that they eat, they drink, and they sleep in the shul, which takes us a discussion. I in shul, you're not allowed to do these types of things. We have shtiblach, so we have different halachas, or whatever was made for the purposes, but generally not allowed to eat and drink in shul. It's a side room, but al kapanim, the reason why they make kiddush is for everyone else. For the guests, they have nowhere else. So that's why they make the kiddush for them. But again, for them, it's going to be b'mokum suda. It says the Gemara about the Shmuel Tamei. Shmuel goes according to his reasoning. Dama Shmuel, he says in kiddush of b'mokum suda, kiddush can only be in the place of where there's a meal. And if you make kiddush and you didn't make a meal in that place, you have not fulfilled your obligation of kiddush. Now, it says the Gemara, they thought from this halacha that Hanamili, when did he say the kiddush only in the place where the meal is only mibais labais, only if you're going from house to house. But if you went from one place to another place in the same house, let's say from the first floor to the second floor, then you wouldn't have to go back and make kiddush. However, that's what they thought to say. However, Amalu Rav Anna, and this gets into the whole discussion. The Rishonim are busy with this stuff. We're talking about kiddush on the one hand, but we're going to be talking about also hilchas brachas, which is also switching places. But this is also comes up regarding hilchas brachas that they thought, okay, the same house, it's okay. On that Amalu Rav Anna bar Tachlidish is not true. Many times I was in front of Shmuel. The Nachas Me'igla Ara, he came down from the roof to the ground, the floor, and then he went and made kiddush again. In other words, because the kiddush that he made on the top floor, he didn't have the suda, so when he came back down, he had to make kiddush again because it did not fulfill his obligation of a kiddush. And Rav Huna held like Shmuel that in kiddush, so the kiddush has to be in the place where the meal is, because Rav Huna kiddush, and the Gemara brings a story to illustrate this. Rav Huna once made kiddush. And the candle fell down, and it extinguished before he was able to eat. So they took his food, they took it to the chuppah of his son, Rabbi Shroger, that they had candles lit there for the simcha, and he made kiddush, and he tasted something. What do you mean kiddush? He already made kiddush before, and the candles went out before he got a chance to eat. Obviously, he holds in kiddush of makom suda because kiddush will only be in a place of where you have the meal. And Rabbi also held in kiddush of makom suda. How do we know this? Because Abai said, when I was by the house of the master, meaning by Rabbi, when he would make kiddush, and we wanted to already leave over there, we wanted to go home already. So Amalon, he would tell us, taste something. Es epis. Maybe by the time you're going to go to where you're staying, the candles are already going to go out. And you're not going to make kiddush in the place of where you can eat. And therefore, as Rashbam explains, you're not going to eat. And even if you go to sleep without eating, but you're not going to fulfill the kiddush that you heard over here. Because then kiddush, because kiddush can only be in a place of a meal. And Tracy's Baba says, why wasn't he concerned about the Suda Shabbos? They're not going to be able to eat without the candle. What are you saying about you're not going to fulfill your kiddush because you're not going to have a Makom Suda? What about the Suda? So he says because they could do tomorrow 3 Sudas, or maybe in the place where there is light that they could eat, there was no wine over there. So therefore he was concerned for them regarding they're not going to be yates to the kiddush. Again, so you see the same idea that he held kiddush could only be the Makom Suda. Now, basically, the Gemara continues, it's primarily so that Rabbah held like Shmuel that in Kiddush of Makom Suda. But Abaye said, Kol Mili Demar, all the teachings of Rabbah have Avid Karav. You would always do it like Rav, which again, Rav held that you don't need Kiddush Makom Suda as we started off the Daf. L'bar Mahani Talas David Gishmuel, except for the following 3 halachas that it did like Shmuel. What are those 3? One is Matir Mi Beged LaBeged. You're allowed to take tzitzis from this garment and put on another talis. Second halacha was umadlikin miner l'ner, that you could light from one ner Chanukah to another ner Chanukah, and you don't have to go ahead and use from a different candle that's not a ner Chanukah, because you might think that might be considered as a disgrace. No, you're able to light from one to another. And halacha regarding dragging something on Shabbos, it's telling the price. He says, a person could drag mita, a bed, kisei, a chair, besavsla, a bench, b'Shabbos on the ground, although it's going to be dragging. It's as long as you're not intending to make a ditch, because that's considered davashay maskau, and it's unattended, therefore it's going to be permitted. Now these 3 things, Machlik is Rabbi Shmuel and Machlik and the Shabbos of Chav Beis Dav. And that Abaye is saying Rabbah like this in these 3 areas he did like Shmuel, who is the Molin opinion. But over here, why is he doing like Shmuel to require Kiddush Makom Suda? I thought you said in everything he holds like Rav, except for these 3. And Rav holds you don't need Kiddush Makom Suda. And that says the Gemara, Kechumri de Rav have of it. Like the stringency the Rav he would do, except for those 3 where he did like Shmuel Lekula. But Kekuli de Rav, like the Lindsay the Rav, like let's say regarding the laws of Kiddush like Makom Suda, that like have oven, that he didn't necessarily do like Rav. Now, Rashbam asks, the Brisa says in Erev Navam and Beis, that whoever does like the stringency of Beisham and the stringency of Hill, on them the pasuk says, Haksil b'chesh chaylach. How could you do like the stringency of both? How could you hold like the stringency of Shmuel over here and the stringency of Rav over there? So that says Rashbam. The Gemara tells over there it's only when those are contradictory halachas, like how much is missing from the spine. And Shmuel says the same thing is regarding the laws of Treifa, where that's a stringency in one place, a lindsay in another one. To take both stringencies, that's considered a fool. But over here, in the 2 different areas halacha, that's not a difficulty that it can be Rav one stringency and Shmuel like another stringency. And the one thing is, from here we see that in the halacha is like Shmuel, that Kiddush is only Makom Suda, which is how we paskin. You can only make Kiddush, it's a whole machlek is what is exactly Makom Suda. Could it be even another cup of wine? Could it be mezainis? Could it even be peiris? But some whole dafka has to be with pas, has to be with dafka bread. Now, if someone makes Kiddush for others out of his house, Rashbam says that he wouldn't have to make a Suda over there, because even if he doesn't make the Suda over there, those who he's making Kiddush for, they have to fulfill their obligation, because for them, it's B'makom Suda. And as Taisa says on the previous Amid, he says that it sounds like that, where one person would make Kiddush in Shul, and the guest would be yet to their obligation. So you see that you can make Kiddush even though it's not your own Suda. But it says Taisi, right, when there's no guest near the shul, that one should not make Kiddush, that would be Bracha Batala, because you hold like Shmuel, and that's actually why in Halach it's brought not to really have this Kiddush in shul, because we don't have that anymore, these guests that are eating there in the shul, so therefore it would be a Bracha Batala, because not having Kiddush Makom Suda, what's the point of making that Kiddush? Which again, not only does it make that it's then you're not Yetzi Yechiv, that comes out it's a Bracha Batala, because the Kiddush is only valid if it's Makom Suda. So there was 2 different opinions regarding the halacha of Kiddush and Shul. Now the Gemara brings a 3rd opinion. Rabbi Yichnam, he says, Af Yidei Yayin Nami Yatsu. He says that even the bracha of the Boy Pragafen, you fulfilled your obligation when you heard that in Shul, and you don't have to go and make a new bracha on the wine that you're going to have in the middle of the meal at home. Why? Because the way Rashbam says it, he wasn't Masiach Das when he left shul, because he still intends to eat and drink when he gets home. So therefore, it's a continuation of that Bar Priagavan. It says the Gemara, because according to his reasoning, he says, he says, whether you're changing the wine, meaning, let's say they bring him wine from another barrel, and it has a different taste. Either it tastes worse, or it tastes better. So, as he's going to say on the base, you don't have to go and make a second bracha on the wine, meaning the bar paragraph you made on the first barrel will be valid on the second barrel. But as Rashbam points out, hatoiva hametiv, you have to make if the second one is better than the first one, as the Gemara says the bracha is not the base. Just that he says that shina yayin, you don't have to make a new bracha, it just means for the bar paragraph. You made on one barrel, you don't have to make a new bar paragraph on the second barrel. Now it's the kid of the base. And the echad shina makim, this is the halacha that he's saying, not like Rabbi Shmuel, not only changing the one, but changing your place for anything that you're eating. If you ate from it in one place and you go to eat another place, says Rabbi Yochanan, you don't have to make a second bracha. And again, with Toma, for example, where he was not Masir Das, he did not forget about that he intended to eat in between. Therefore, we see Rabbi Yochanan Shitasa and not like Rabbi Shmuel. However, the Gemara rejects Rabbi Yochanan, Meisvei of the following brisa. The brisa says clearly, Shina Makim, if you change the place where you made the bracha, you have to make a new bracha like Rabbi Shmuel that they said you have not fulfilled the obligation of the wine, not like Rabbi Yochanan. And Shina Yayin, you're right, you're just changing the wine, you're in the same place, but you bring a new barrel, and it's Tzarech L'Barach, you wouldn't have to make a new paragraph. And says it's a reputation of Rabbi Yochanan. You see that when you change your place of where your session of your eating or drinking was, you would have to make a new bracha. Now the Gemara now continues to qualify this teaching, which again we see Rabbi Shmuel holds, and we refer to Rabbi Yochanan. Yosef Rav Ida bar Avin kamed Rav Chizda. Rav Ida bar Avin was sitting in Rav Chizda. Yosef Rav Chizda became Mishmei Rav Huna. And Rav Chizda was saying over the name of Rav Huna the following halacha. It says, "Hada Amethyst that you said Shina Magam Tzarech L'Barach," and this is where it's well known for the sugya of Hilchas Brachas, what to do. If you change your place, you have to make a new bracha. They only said this from one house to another house. But from one place to another place, what the gears is from one corner to another corner. The Be'alacha has a discussion. But from one place to another place, then you don't have to go ahead and make a new bracha. And that's the discussion where you say like you shouldn't really leave from one room to another room, from one corner to another corner. That it is okay. But al kapanim, if it's not leaving the house, then you wouldn't have to make a new bracha. And only Rabbi bar Avin, he says, this is how they taught in the Brais and the Yeshiva of Ravinik. Some say, he said a slightly different wording, says that in the Brais of the Yeshiva of Ravinik, they said like you. So then the Gemara says, wait a second, Rav Huna is Amoiri, he's teaching us what a Brais says explicitly, so why do we need him for? Says Rav Huna must need to lishmei. They didn't know this Brais. And yes, he was Machavan to the Brais. Now, that was what Rav Chiz had said over in the name of Rav Huna, that the halach of Shina Makim is only a problem from Bais LaBais. Now, the Suyas Rav Chiz, then subsequently Rav Chiz was still sitting, for Kam Mashmei Dinafshin. He said over now his own Chiddush. He said, Hada Amadis, that you said Shina Makim Tzarech L'Barach, that if you change place, you have to make a new bracha, a further qualification. This is only something that does not require a bracha achrayna in the place where you're eating. For example, water or fruits, and this is a very important halacha, this happens all the time. This is one of the most commonly applicable questions in our society. We're not like in old times that they used to just eat a meal and leave. We're always eating. And we're going from place to place. We're always in mobility. So this is one of the most applicable halachas, and there is some grade to it. But Al Kapam will say the way the Rashbam says it. For example, you're eating water or fruits. It does not require what he calls a bracha chashuva on its own. The bracha bar nefashos, as we learned in Sefta Bracha, it's not considered a significant bracha. There's discussion even what requires bar nefashos. Now, so therefore, since it's not a significant bracha, it's more like a generic bracha. So you don't have to make a bracha achrayna after it in the place where you ate it. Meaning, most definitely, when you got up and you went somewhere else, that getting up is a sign that you're done with your meal. Because you don't have to make the bracha achrayna where you ate it. So getting up, we're presuming you're done. And you'll make a bracha achrayna wherever you went. So when you continue eating, that's a new meal. So you gotta make a new bracha, rishayna, when you're going to start again. And there's a big discussion, what do you do? Do you make a new bracha? Do you make a new bracha rishayna? That is a discussion regarding exactly what the halacha is. Machlokes Rishonim. Akapanim, if it's something that does not require bracha in the place where you ate, think of it, a bar nefashos. Whatever you make a bar nefashos on. If that you could, once you leave, you can make a bracha achrayna over there. So you're done over here. You're finished already. So you don't have to come back to make the bracha achrayna. So then that's what the halacha is shinu makom tzarich levarach. Avol, and this is important halacha. Dvarim hatu'in bracha lachrein b'mkaimam. But if it's something that requires a bracha achrayna in the place that you ate, meaning it requires a chashuv bracha, therefore it requires. Meaning, why do certain things require bracha achrayna in the place? It's a chashuv bracha. It's significant. Something significant, you got to do it where you ate it, like the Shivas Aminim, and this is where Machlokes Rishonim, but the Rashbam says like the 7 species that Eretz Yisrael is praiseworthy, which has what's called a bracha achas min shalish, what's called bracha achrayah, ala michya, ala gefen, and it was with that intention that you went out, which was to make one bracha on both. So therefore, when you go to the second place, you don't have to make a new bracha rishayna. Now, actually, from here, the Rashbam says, is we learn out that this that it says in brachas that in the Nafal Beis, if someone forgot, he ate and he forgot, and he didn't make a bracha achrayna where he ate. Beishamai says, it's a machlok Beishamai still, if you have to go back. But one thing we see from our sugi is that like a tchila, you have to make a bracha achrayna in the place where you ate. Although Beisil says that you could bench over there, but like a tchila, you're supposed to bench where you ate, and that's actually the heter why you don't have to make a new bracha rishayna, because you're supposed to make a bracha achrayna where you ate. Additionally, we're talking about the Shivas Aminim, which is like Birchas Hamazon, which again is a long and chashuv bracha, main shalish. Those are things that says the Gemara ain't tzarich levarach. Then says Rav Chizda, you would not have to make a new bracha rishayna when you change your place, because says the Gemara, my time. What's the reason? Because lekivakama hader, because you're going to go back to your original your establishment, meaning. It's all in mind of your first meal that you're continuing to eat right now, which is to finish your meal. Because the fact that you got up, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. I have to go back anyways to make a bracha achrayna. Oh, if I end up eating somewhere else, okay, so then that's a continuation because I'm not done. The fact that I got up is not a done because I got to make a bracha achrayna. Okay, if I eat over there, fine, then I'll continue over there and I'll finish. But the getting up is not considered the finishing. Now, the Gemara says, however, Rav Shloimy he disagrees. He says, Echad zeh ve'echad zeh. He says, whether it requires a bracha achrayna in its place, whether it does not require, meaning, let's say it's not from the Shivas Aminim, says, tzarich levarach, either one, not only, let's say, burn the fashas, but even, let's say, something like an ala michi type of a food, then is something that you're going to require to make a new bracha when you switch your place. And basically, the Gemara actually asked on Rav Chizda for the following brisa. The Brisa says, B'nei Chabura, Shrei Mesubin Lish, is also, this is brought in secondary to our sugi, but it's also important halacha regarding the halachas of Shina Makom. Let's say you have a group of people, Shrei Mesubin Lish, they were sitting around drinking. They lifted up their feet, meaning they got up to go out, to greet the groom or the bride. They hear, and they're going out, everyone runs out to see what's going on over there. Or they're singing for the kala, right? They're dancing. When they go out, entering the bracha l'mafreya. They don't require a bracha achrayna from the food that they're eating because they plan on coming back to continue their drinking session. Now, when they come back, enter the bracha l'gitchila. So when they leave, they don't have to make a bracha achrayna. And when they come back, they don't have to make a new bracha rishayna. Now, but Medvar moves this important qualification. Says the Brisa, when did we say this? Shenichu sham zaken achayla. These are El Yidel or the Kranke. He's over there. He couldn't get up to go out to the Chas and Kala. So they left him over there by the meal. He's still there. So that's why when you got up to go out, you didn't have to make a bracha. When you came back, you didn't have to make a bracha rishayna.
Talking about wine, no?
Yeah, so that's a kvias. That's also a kvias. That's also a kvias. There's also discussion regarding wine. That's one of the rice they want to bring. But akapanim, it's that's. They don't mean
burning fushes, no?
Right. It requires a bracha, and that's what actually the Gemara's raya is going to be in a second. So this is only if they left an elderly person or a sick person. But if they didn't leave an elderly person or a sick person, so when they leave, when you're getting up to go outside, you can't just get up and go outside. You have to make first a bracha achrayna. When you come back in, you have to make a new bracha when you come back in. Says the Gemara, and from the fact that they said that they lifted up their feet, they were oiker, they had to uproot themselves. The inference is that's the proof that they were engaged in consuming things which requires a bracha achrayna in their place. Because uprooting sounds like that it's only because quickly the chas and kala were coming that they got up. But if not, they would have stood, they would have had to stand up, and they would have to stay there and make a bracha achrayna afterwards in their place. They only got up quickly because the chas and kala was there, but really, they would have had to make the bracha achrayna where they were. And that's what akr sounds like. And it sounds like the time of the it sounds like the only reason why you don't have to make a new bracha is because they left someone there by the Suda. This is the famous halacha that if you're middle of the Suda and you leave someone over there, that wouldn't be considered as a hefsek. Because and that's where then when they leave, into the bracha lemafred, they don't have to make a bracha achrayna. When they come back in, into the bracha legetchil, they don't have to make a new bracha rishayna. But if they wouldn't leave an elderly person or a sick person, sounds like when they would leave, to the bracha lemafred would require bracha achrayna. And when they come back in, to the bracha legetchil, they would have to require bracha rishayna. Kasra of that's difficult on Rav Chizda because according to Rav Chizda, even if they don't come back to their place, rather they finish their meal somewhere else, you don't have to make a new bracha rishayna because they didn't yet make the bracha achrayna. Yet here you see obviously from the brayso that even if they come back to that first place, you have to make a new bracha rishayna because you left. They're engaged in something that requires a bracha achrayna b'mkayim. And again, the Pesach says that wine and the shivas aminim are not included in bracha achrayna b'mkayim. It's only bread and all types of breads that you make hamaitzi, or maybe types of mezainis that are from the 5 types of grains. That would be to the bracha achrayna. Again, that's a big halachic discussion exactly, even in the place exactly what's included in that halacha. But one thing is, it sounds like that they were engaged in something that requires bracha achrayna l'achrein, and still you're telling me that it would require a new bracha rishayna just by leaving your place, even if you come back to the original place. So it's definitely not like Rav Chizda. So Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak is a continued of Kabezim and Aleph. He says that Man Tana Akiris. He says, who's the Tana of the Brayso that you just asked me from? That says that even things that require bracha achrayna in their place, if you change your place, you'd have to make a new bracha. That is like Rabbi Huda. And yeah, it's the Machlekes Tanoim, and I'm not going like Rabbi Huda, the Tana in the Brayso. Chaveim Shoy Mesubin. Same case. So you were friends that were sitting around. They got up in the middle of the meal to go to shul or to go to the Beis HaMedrash. Kishen Yaitzu, when they leave, into the bracha lemafreya, they don't require bracha achrayna. When they come back in, into the bracha legetchil, they don't require bracha rishayna. Rabbi Yehuda said, when we say this, if you left some guys there at the suda, says, hey guys, we're going to mincha, we'll be back later, you guys stay here. That's where you don't require new bracha rishayna. But if you not leave some chevra, when they leave to the bracha lemafreya, you require bracha achrayna. When you come back to the bracha legetchil, you require a new bracha rishayna. Now, as Rashbam points out, obviously that if this is Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbanan and the Reishon disagree with him. That even if you did not leave some people, the fact that you left to go to shul would not require a new bracha rishayna, like Rav Chizda, because since you have to make the bracha achrayna when you ate, the fact that you left is not considered as a hefsek, and because Rav Yechanan says in Eruvin and the Pesachim Daf, wherever Rabbi Yehuda says Bameh, like he says over here in this brayso Bameh Dvar, he's coming to disagree. When he says Emasai, he's coming to explain. But Bameh Dvar is coming to disagree. Obviously, that he's disagreeing with the Rabbanan, and the Rabbanan do not require, like he qualifies, when you leave Mikzis Chaverim. Even if you did not leave Mikzis Chaverim, the fact that you were Okarek Leim, you were eating something that requires bracha achrayna b'mekayman, the fact that you left is not going to make you make a new bracha when you come back in. So this is discussing today's Daf and Pesachim Daf Kuf Aleph. We said that Kiddush they make in the shul. There was such a custom they would make Kiddush in the shul. Now, what's the halacha? Rav said that you don't fulfill your obligation of the wine. What does that mean? And say when you go home and you wanted to continue drinking wine, you would have to make a new bracha because you drank in one place. It's not going to help you for another place. But Kiddush, you did fulfill your obligation because he holds you don't have to have Kiddush Makom Sudas. I heard Kiddush already in shul. Shmuel holds no, even Kiddush you don't have to fulfill your obligation because, as we paskin, and Kiddush have Makom Suda. The fact that you're a Kiddush in shul, what does that help? There's no meal that was going on over there. Again, our Kiddush that we make, there is that halacha of Kiddush Makom Suda because of the mezainis that's eaten. But again, the Gemara qualified that this halacha of Kiddush Makom Suda is a problem if you don't have it in the same place, only from one house to another house. But in the same house itself, then you can fulfill your obligation of Kiddush, even if it's another corner, because that's considered Kiddush Makom Suda. Rabbi Yochanan said that actually even the Yain you fulfill your obligation of the Bar Paragafen, because he says you're not Masich Das when you leave the shul to go home, and the Bar Paragafen from the shul works. And that's because he holds Shina Makom. You don't have to make a new bracha, which the Gemara rejects from a Brisa Kliya holds Shina Makom. If you change your place of where you were eating and drinking, you would have to make a new bracha. Now, then the Gemara qualifies and says, this that we said the Shina Makom, you change your place, you have to make a new bracha, is only if it's from one house to another house, in the same house itself, and we hold to the Evid, for sure that even if it's different rooms, especially in today's times where people are always moving around, that we have that in mind, and you wouldn't have to make a new bracha. But from one house to another one there was. And another qualification is only something that does not require the bracha achrein b'mekayma, like a bar nefasheh type of a food. That is something where the second you leave, you would have to make a new bracha. And this happens all the time. Someone's having a coffee. Okay, it's a discussion on halachei drachim. There's many different subcategories to this discussion, but that's the halacha. You're middle eating your shakal, you go out, that's it, you're done. You can make a bar nefasheh over there, but you come back in, you got to make a new bracha. But something that does require bracha and mekayma. So you're middle eating a Danish, and then actually the coffee is considered part of the same eating session as your Danish. You went out, again, it has to be that you ate a kizayis. If you didn't eat a kizayis, and actually then it's considered you wouldn't require bracha achrein and mekayma. You didn't need to share. So even if you eat hamaitzi, if you took just a piece and someone's by the door and you went out, again, that's also fahak, unless you have people eating with you. Then you have the other halacha we mentioned about that you left people inside. But if it's just you and you go outside, then you went out, you were mafsi your bracha, you have to make a new bracha, because you didn't have the share of a kizayis yet. But generally, the things that require bracha achrein b'mekayman, then you're going back to your original kiviyas, and then you would not have to make a new bracha rishayno when you come back in. Rav Sheshels know both of them, even the bracha hatuna, bracha b'mekayman, he holds, if you do shina makom, you'd have to make a new bracha. Now, I brought a brisa that says not of chizos. That the Gemara says that's like if Yehuda is not like Rabbanan. Where if you were Oikar Aglein, yeah, that means Oikar means things that do require Bracha Achreina then Mekayman. And we see that Tzarech Lavar, you would have to make a new Bracha. Yeah, if you didn't leave over an elderly person. But again, that's going like Yehuda and Rav Chizah holds like Rabban that will hold that you don't have to make a new Bracha. Thank you anytime.